First thing we need to do is open Visual Studio. We will be creating a new project. Again, we will be sticking with the console app on the .NET framework in C#. So I'll hit next. And we'll call this one While Loops and hit create. So the purposes of this lesson is to cover what's called a while loop. Now, a loop is essentially a block of code that runs multiple times. A while loop is a specific type of loop that runs until a logical condition is not met. So well, you can think of this as where we did conditional logic before, where we said if something is equal to this, then do this block of code here. What a while loop does is it says, while this condition is true, keep looping over and over and over this bit of code. So let's look at how we do that. So let's map out what we want to do first. So we want to ask the user for a command. We want to run a command handling loop. And then finally, we want to exit the application. So in previous videos, what we've noticed is when we run our application, as soon as we've handled one command, we either hit the end of our program and the program closes, or what we have done to stop that happening is we've waited for the user to enter something and then we've just allowed the application to close. And the reason we've done that is so the user has a chance to read what the result of a previous command was. Now, that's not a very typical way to write console applications. What typically happens in a console application is you launch them and then they will respond to any command that you enter, and they'll respond to usually an unlimited number of commands. And then usually when a user types something in like quit or exit or finished, then the application will allow itself to close. And a very typical way to do this is using a loop. So what the loop does essentially is it waits for the user to type something in, it takes what the user's typed in, handles it, and then it waits for the user to type something in again. And then that loop continues until perhaps a special type of command is put in, like maybe a quit command or an exit command. And then as soon as that exit command comes in, it then breaks the loop and the application closes. So that's what we'll be looking at today. So just like in previous examples, we will be asking the user for a command. Say, please enter a command. And then, unlike previous examples, we won't be having a console.read line at the end because we'll handle that inside of our loop. As soon as our loop's finished, we are happy for the application to finish, so we won't be adding anything at the end here. And then the real magic sauce to make this work is the while loop. So the way that you set up a while loop is like this. We say while, and then we open up parentheses and we put some logic in here. So you could have whilst some variable A equals variable B, continue to loop, but what I typically do in this scenario is I just say while true. So true is always true. This will loop forever and ever and ever. It will not stop unless we break the loop. And there's a way we can do that, which we'll cover in a minute. So we'll say while true, and then we'll capture the user's command. So we'll say var command equals console.readline. Oh, console.readline. And so this will just loop forever. It will wait for the user to enter a line. It'll assign that line to this variable we've created. And then at the moment, we don't do anything else. So we'll just start again and it'll keep doing that. And we'll never hit this final bracer. So the application will just run forever. So let's put something in there. So let's just try this a bit. So in the previous video, we looked at creating functions that handle commands. So let's continue with that, and we'll just cover that again quickly. So we'll create a new static void, we'll call it command handler. We know it wants to take a string command as a parameter. Open, close our braces. So we've got our command handler here. And actually all this command is going to do is repeat the command that the user types in. So we'll say console.writeLine, and we'll do some joining of strings. So we'll create a string and we'll say you entered B, and then we'll add that onto the command they entered, and then we'll add a final string on there, and we'll just say command to console. So it's very simple handler there. All it does is it tells the user what command they entered, so that's fine because we only want a simple handler for this purpose. And now inside of our loop, once we've got our command, we want to trigger the command handler. So we'll say command handler, and we will pass in our command that we've just captured from the console, and we'll finish our line. And now what will happen is when we launch our application, we'll be able to put in an unlimited number of commands, and the program won't close because this loop will run over and over and over again. So let's just look at what that looks like. So please enter a command, and I'll say hello, and it tells me that I entered the hello command to the console, but I could say goodbye, and it informs me again that I've entered the goodbye command. Type in LOL, and I could literally go on and on and on and on forever. The program will never finish. And that's because that loop, the condition for that loop is always true. Because I've just put true in there. True is always true. It's never going to change. So there's a way that we can have the loop actually break itself though. And we could actually put in at the end here, if command equals exit, and then we could say break. So break essentially breaks this loop here. You see, actually, when I click on it, it highlights the loop. It's telling me that this line of code is actually going to affect this loop that you have here. So this will loop forever, but if it loops once and the user has actually typed in exit, then it will break the loop. So let's have a look at what that looks like. So we could say hello, say goodbye, say LOL. The loop's continuing to work as normal, but if I say exit, the program closes. So we've controlled the flow of the main function so that it doesn't end until the user asks it to end. So it's a nice little function, and it's a way of, I make programs like this all the time. Sometimes I want to make a very simple program. I don't want to make a really complicated UI. There might be, a handful of functions that I want to make easily accessible to myself. So I'll make a small console application. I'll set something up with a command handler. I'd probably have much more, complex logic for handling the commands. But this part in the main here is essentially always the same. And then as soon as I'm finished, I want to be able to type exit into the command line, and that closes my program. So that's a very basic while loop. It's not the only type of loop that there is in C#. There's a bunch of different loops, and we'll cover them a bit later on. But for the purposes of a console application, the while loop is very powerful. And actually, there's very few times where I make a console application where I won't use something like that to keep the application open, to handle like multiple commands, or to handle commands perhaps not being in the right format initially and things like that. So you should go away and make your own console application. Make sure you use the while loop in there and see if you can handle a few different commands before your application closes.